Well folks, it's that time of year again. Not Christmas, forget Christmas. It's time for the Tarkov wipe. Santa ain't got nothing on his thick Russian cousin Nikita, and he says he's got the goods, we're just waiting on delivery. There's a lot of speculation and wild rumors about this wipe, but that's not what this video is about. In this one, I just want to talk a little about what I'm hoping to see in the upcoming wipe, and some things that I'm desperate for some progress to be made on. This isn't speculation about what I think might or might not be in the wipe. I'm not reaching into interviews and claiming some vague response means a big change is confirmed. I just want to talk about what I'd like to see, and my hopes for what the new wipe might bring when it finally hits us at some undetermined date and time. First up, of course, we have the elephant in the room, Streets of Tarkov, which we're supposedly getting a first iteration of with the upcoming wipe, or at least that's what we've been told. This map is essentially the MacGuffin of the Escape from Tarkov's cinematic universe. Streets has been talked about for like 5 years. It's been held up as the centerpiece of Tarkov for as long as I can remember, and therefore the expectations for Streets have been raised to cosmic levels. However, we're not getting Streets of Tarkov in this wipe. We're getting a street in Tarkov as the first iteration of the map. I don't say this to complain or to rag on BSG about it. I say this to be upfront and not mislead or overhype this for anyone watching. I'm picturing Streets being like Shoreline in its original release, where the shell of parts of the map are there, but we'll only be able to explore up to a certain point. Kinda like how the resort in Shoreline was originally blocked off, even though you could see it and see that you should be able to get into it. My biggest hopes for Streets are this. It needs to be better optimized than Lighthouse, it needs to have a quest line that makes us want to go there, and I would really love it if the map has some kind of interactive features, like opening up a bank vault or something like that. To the first point, I think just from a public perception standpoint, if Streets runs as bad as Lighthouse does, it's just not going to look good for BSG or restore much lost confidence to any Tarkov players out there. Performance issues are like a chronic disease for this game. It starts off as something that you're willing to tolerate because the rest of the game is so compelling, but after a few hundred hours, simple performance issues are often enough to make people just straight up quit, so getting this under wraps would be huge. To the second point, I think releasing Streets without at least as many quests as Lighthouse had on its release would be a giant mistake. We've already become pretty used to the fact that after questing is done for a wipe, basically the entire community just completely ignores any map that is even mildly inconvenient to find PvP on, and they just play customs and labs on repeat. Without a good amount of quests with worthwhile rewards, Streets runs the risk of being horribly neglected, and that would be a damn shame. There's also just massive potential for cool quests in the actual city of Tarkov. This is the place where all the crazy shit that happened in this universe happened, so there's really no excuse to not include some cool lore-friendly quests that uncover secrets about Terra Group and the government entities involved here. To my third point about the map having some kind of interactive feature, I just really think that other games in this looter extraction genre have sort of been showing up Tarkov when it comes to having more interactive features and unique things to do within each different raid. Marauders and DMZ have both leaned into some cool interactive elements, like using torches to cut open a vault in Marauders, or having quests and tons of random opportunities for quick loot and events littered around the map in DMZ. I don't know about you, but the prospect of covering my buddy while he uses a welding torch to cut into a bank vault, which sets off an alarm that attracts scavs and players to the location, which need to be held off while we pack up the loot and then plan on how to get out of this place, sounds like so much more fun to me than sliding a key into another random door and then finding a Bitcoin on a desk and putting it in my secure container. Next up, for my hopes and dreams for this next wipe, I want to talk about gear, weapons, and attachments. One of Tarkov's core features, and ironically enough, I would argue one of the most criminally neglected parts of the game by the developers. There's probably well over 1,000 attachments in Tarkov, and more than 50 weapons. Each of these attachments is modeled in a level of detail that is rare even among AAA developers. Each weapon is painstakingly animated to reach immersion levels that are unmatched by basically any other game on the planet. And despite all that, I don't think it would be much of an exaggeration to say that less than 30% of the available gear and attachments in Tarkov see regular use or are even used at all in some cases. There are plenty of cool stocks and foregrips in the game, but there's no incentive to use anything except the usual suspects with the best stats or the best price. There are dozens of muzzle attachments for 5.56 rifles, but there's no reason to use any of them except the Saker or the Ultra 5 suppressor, because the rest just kind of make your build suck. There are well over 50 scopes and sights in Tarkov, and 90% of players use the Voodoo, the Vortex, a Hollow Sight, or a Delta Point, and everything else is just sold to mechanic. The fact is that one of Tarkov's most compelling features is rendered impotent by its own parameters. Without significant changes to the stats on individual attachments, we are never going to escape the stale meta builds that have come to dominate weapon building in Tarkov. The only way for the devs to make new attachments worth using for players in this current system is to make them either statistically better than everything that already exists, or make them significantly cheaper, which leads to power creep because the newest attachment either has to be the best option, the cheapest option, or it just goes completely unused, and now a developer's hard work was basically wasted. Personally, I think this problem is much more harmful than the developers and even the players realize, and without a significant rework to attachment stats, prices, unlock paths, and trader supplies, one of Tarkov's most interesting, compelling, and attractive features to outsiders is basically dead in the water. It's not enough to just add a new meta gun in every patch either. Players want to feel like their gun is their gun. Players want to feel some kind of personalization and player expression in how they build their loadouts. Players want to feel like their choices actually matter and can be their choices, not feeling like they just wasted resources and time and should have just followed a cookie cutter build that's simply better because of mathematics. So what would I like to see then? I would like to see stats become more normalized between different attachments so that part A isn't just arbitrarily better than part B because it's unlocked later, which gives you freedom to build something different without making your gun suck because you didn't just buy the best attachments. For example, the HK416 has been in the game for about 3 years, give or take, and in that 3 years time, we still have never once been able to make an effective build with anything but the 20-inch barrel, because all the other options completely gut the potential stats of a finished build. I would like to see prices that make sense and not run into situations where the best 7.62 suppressor is less expensive than a significantly worse option, which is also unlocked later and even locked behind quests sometimes. I'd like to see an actual rework of what parts are sold at different trader levels. The SA58 hasn't been good for over a year, and you still cannot put a sight or handguard on it until level 30, which makes it useless even as a low-level M80 gun. Basically, I'd like to see any changes that encourage players to experiment and make their own builds, and move away from calculating gun stats based on simple math that favors a very linear, streamlined approach to building loadouts. Next up, quests. It's been confirmed in a recent Q&A with Nikita that we should be seeing some reshuffling or reworking of quests with the release of Streets, which is a pretty optimistic thing to hear. That's great, but what does it actually mean? Currently, quests are essentially unlocked in the order that they were added to the game in the first place. It's not always like this, but it's largely like this. The first quests that we do were literally the first quests ever added to the game. Then we get a massive spike in Shoreline quests in the mid-game because they're just all the quests that were added when Shoreline released. Then we get a massive spike of Interchange and Reserve quests after that because they were the next batch of quests added to the game. With Lighthouse, we did get some nice access to new quests mixed in with some of the old, and a little bit of shake-up to some of the quest chains. But for the most part, quests are not ordered in a way that makes sense for progression. More of a linear path, starting with the oldest quests and finishing with the most recently designed quests. Hell, even in the Gunsmith questline, you have to find and mod an RSAS before you unlock quests to do basic modding on AK rifles. Make that make sense to me. In my opinion, I think that every single map except labs should have some kind of quest line starting at low level, even level 1. Every map should be in play, and players shouldn't feel literally forced into playing customs and only customs to make progress on day one. This would not only help by adding a sense of choice and variety to your early wipe experience, but it would stop the massive problem of tens of thousands of people smashing into a customs and woods queue on wipe day and literally crashing those servers so you can't load into a raid even if you wanted to. I don't expect it to be perfect or to be done on the first try, but I do expect BSG to try. There's tons of other things that I could ramble about here that have already been beaten to death. Things like inventory management, the flea market interface, the hideout interface, audio problems, lighting problems, AI health and scavs tanking headshots, problems with ammo balance, accuracy, and damage at range. The list goes on and on. One of my big points of frustration that I didn't touch on much here is that exploits around movement, healing, shooting, and many other factors in a gunfight are still just rampantly abusable with no end in sight. And to me, that ruins the game more than a lot of performance issues ever could. But I think I need to put my thoughts on that into their own separate rant with some more targeted examples. To me, I really think the best path going forward is to start off by making Streets of Tarkov as exciting as possible in order to validate the hype that surrounds it. Because if it isn't, Tarkov doesn't really have any more aces up its sleeve after this one. After that, making gun and loadout building an interesting experience again and broadening the amount of useful items and attachments is to me absolutely critical when it comes to making the moment-to-moment experience more in tune with each player's personal style and not so much dictated by what is just mathematically the best thing in the game. I really do believe that with some good targeted shakeups to the stale formula, this game can get back on top of the genre again. It absolutely has the potential, but it's going to take a lot of good decisions in a row to get there. What do you think? Am I talking out of my ass? Am I just obsessed with an anti-meta philosophy and just need to get good? Or do you agree that the current loadout meta is sucking the fun out of Tarkov? Do I just need to turn my brain off and grind the quests harder? Or is questing as stale as I feel it is? Let me know what you think in the comments. I've got links to my Twitch channel and Discord server down below for anyone interested. And until next time, stay safe in Tarkov City.